But I think
But
most
that's it.
marriages, you know, it's like, I don't know what the statistics are now, but so many of our friends who aren't celebrities or just normal people, you know, you're just trying to get through your life. But I think if people don't, you know, respect each other, or they grow apart, it happens.
For decades, Dorothea remained the quiet force behind one of the most enduring marriages in music. Rarely speaking about their private life, as Jon Bon Jovi's career catapulted him into global superstardom. But now, after years of silence, she has finally broken her reserve. Her candid words pull back the curtain on the man millions thought they knew.
We finally ran away on a day off, and I went to Vegas and, and got married.
Stick with us as we unveil how, at 62, Jon Bon Jovi's wife has finally opened up about her husband and revealed a rather shocking truth. Let's get started. Jon Bon Jovi's career success. After high school, Jon worked as a janitor at his cousin Tony Bon Jovi's power station recording studio in Manhattan, which gave him a chance to meet established musicians and learn the industry from the ground up. This period laid the foundation for the band that would eventually bear his name. In 1983, Bon Jovi officially formed, bringing together Jon as the lead vocalist and guitarist, Richie Sambora as lead guitarist, David Bryan on keyboards, Tico Torres on drums, and Alec John Such on bass. The group signed with Mercury Records after Jon's demo of Runaway gained radio traction in the New York area. Released as a single, Runaway became a regional hit and led to the band's self-titled debut album in 1984. While the album reached only moderate commercial success, peaking at number 43 on the Billboard 200, it was enough to introduce Bon Jovi to a wider audience. It also earned them opening slots for established acts such as ZZ Top and Scorpions. This was, however, just the beginning. The real breakthrough came with the release of Slippery When Wet in August 1986. Recorded in Vancouver, Canada, the album marked a turning point both musically and commercially. Driven by songs like You Give Love a Bad Name, Livin' on a Prayer, and Wanted Dead or Alive, the record became a cultural phenomenon. You Give Love a Bad Name and Livin' on a Prayer both reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. The album itself went on to sell over 12 million copies in the United States alone, and more than 28 million worldwide, according to RIAA and IFPI figures. With Slippery When Wet, Bon Jovi had transitioned from a local New Jersey band to one of the most commercially powerful acts of the decade. The follow-up album, New Jersey, released in September 1988, only strengthened their hold on the rock scene. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 and produced 5 Billboard Hot 100 top 10 singles, including Bad Medicine and I'll Be There For You, both of which hit number 1. At the time, no other hard rock album had produced that many top 10 hits, giving Bon Jovi a record-setting achievement. Internationally, New Jersey topped the charts in multiple countries, including the UK, Australia, and Canada, making Bon Jovi one of the first truly global stadium rock bands. Success, however, came at a cost. Between 1986 and 1990, the band embarked on back-to-back world tours, playing as many as 240 shows in a single year. The relentless schedule took a toll on Jon both physically and mentally. By 1991, he admitted feeling completely burned out and even contemplated ending the band. That year, he cut his signature long hair. Around the same time, Bon Jovi took a short hiatus, during which Jon recorded a solo album, Blaze of Glory, the soundtrack for the film Young Guns 2. The album's title track reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and earned Jon a Golden Globe Award for Best Original Song, as well as an Academy Award nomination. When Bon Jovi returned with Keep the Faith in 1992, the band had evolved musically, adopting a more mature sound. While the grunge movement was reshaping rock music at the time, Bon Jovi managed to maintain relevance by leaning into themes of resilience and change. The album sold over 2 million copies in the United States and produced international hits like Bed of Roses and the title track. Although it didn't match the massive numbers of Slippery When Wet, it kept the band firmly in the spotlight during a period when many of their 1980s peers faded. By the late 1990s, many critics assumed Bon Jovi had peaked, but the band proved otherwise in May 2000 with the release of Crush. The album featured It's My Life, an anthem co-written by Jon Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora, and Max Martin. The track quickly became one of the band's biggest hits, reaching #1 in multiple countries, including Austria, Belgium, Italy, and the Netherlands, and hitting number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the US. More importantly, the song introduced Bon Jovi to a younger generation who had not grown up with their 1980s catalog. The success of It's My Life revitalized Bon Jovi's career, leading to another wave of arena tours throughout the 2000s. Over the following 2 decades, Bon Jovi continued to release albums and tour extensively. Have a Nice Day, Lost Highway, and The Circle all debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. By 2010, the band ranked as one of the top-grossing touring acts in the world, earning more than $146 million from the Circle tour alone. Their Because We Can tour in 2013 grossed over $259 million, making it the highest-grossing tour of that year, placing them among the top-selling bands in rock history. Beyond music, Jon Bon Jovi also explored acting. He appeared in films such as Moonlight and Valentino, U-571, and had recurring roles in television series, including Ally McBeal in 2002. His acting pursuits never overshadowed his music, but they reflected his desire to diversify his career and personal interests. In 2020, the band released their 15th studio album, 2020, which featured songs addressing the COVID-19 pandemic, political unrest, and systemic inequality. But through it all, there has been one stabilizing force in his life: the secret elopement in Las Vegas. On April 29, 1989, Jon Bon Jovi made one of the most unexpected moves of his career and personal life. He secretly eloped with his high school sweetheart, Dorothea Hurley. The couple, who had known each other since their teenage years at Sayreville War Memorial High School in New Jersey, decided to marry in Las Vegas during a brief break in the band's New Jersey World Tour. Their ceremony took place at the Graceland Wedding Chapel, one of Las Vegas's most famous wedding venues. Unlike the grand affairs often associated with rock stars of his magnitude, Jon's decision was intimate, low-key, and entirely out of step with the expectations of his fans and management. At the time, Bon Jovi was at the absolute height of their fame. The New Jersey album, released in September 1988, had already gone multi-platinum and produced 5 Billboard Hot 100 top 10 singles, including chart toppers Bad Medicine and I'll Be There For You. The band's New Jersey Syndicate tour stretched across 16 months, reaching audiences in more than 20 countries and placing them among the most in-demand acts in the world. Against this backdrop of commercial dominance, Jon's elopement came as a shock to both the music industry and his millions of admirers. You see, record executives and managers had carefully crafted Jon's image as an unattainable heartthrob, and marriage, they believed, could jeopardize the band's marketability. The backlash from his inner circle was immediate. Jon later recalled that his manager, Doc McGee, and executives at Mercury Records were furious, fearing that a rock idol's appeal would be diminished once he was perceived as taken. The worry was not unfounded, given the era's reliance on teen and young adult fans who often bought into the fantasy of accessibility and romance. In interviews years later, Jon admitted that he returned from Las Vegas to a storm of criticism from nearly everyone involved in his career, with even members of the band blindsided by his decision. The record label, which had invested heavily in marketing Bon Jovi as global superstars, feared that news of the marriage could derail the band's carefully cultivated image at a critical point in their trajectory. Fans, too, reacted strongly. While some admired the spontaneity of Jon's move, many felt betrayed, particularly young female fans who idolized him as a romantic figure. For weeks, gossip columns and music magazines debated whether the marriage would undermine Bon Jovi's dominance on the charts. Despite the uproar, Jon and Dorothea's marriage endured. What had been viewed as a reckless career risk eventually came to be seen as one of the more grounded decisions of his life. The couple built a family together, raising 4 children: Stephanie, Jesse, Jacob, and Romeo, while Jon maintained his career at the top of the music industry. Confession of Imperfections. At the height of his fame in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Jon Bon Jovi was one of the most recognizable faces in rock music. With chart-topping albums like Slippery When Wet and New Jersey, he was leading one of the biggest bands in the world, performing in sold-out stadiums across continents and appearing on countless magazine covers. Alongside this meteoric success came the temptations that defined the rock and roll lifestyle of the era: adoring fans, constant travel, and the unrelenting pressure of being a global symbol. In candid interviews years later, Jon acknowledged that he wasn't a saint and that he had got away with murder during this period. Not literally, of course. Instead, the phrasing strongly implied late-night partying, substance use, and physical encounters on the road. Essentially, behaviors that could have threatened his marriage to Dorothea Hurley. However, while he indulged in temptations that could have cost him everything, he never faced the kind of catastrophic consequences that befell many of his contemporaries. By contrast, some fellow musicians of the same era weren't so lucky. Guns N' Roses members struggled openly with controlled substances. Motley Crue's Nikki Sixx nearly died from an overdose in 1987. And countless marriages of rock stars collapsed under the pressure of constant touring and infidelity. Jon, however, managed to hold on to Dorothea and his family life despite missteps. Jon also revealed how close he came to burnout. By 1990, Bon Jovi had played 232 shows on the New Jersey tour, making it one of the most grueling schedules of any rock band of the time. The non-stop cycle of albums, press, and touring left him physically and emotionally depleted. He credited Dorothea as the glue that held their marriage together during the chaos. He admitted that while he didn't always behave perfectly, she chose to stand by him, grounding him when the band's fame could have easily torn them apart. Dorothea herself later explained their longevity by saying, "We grow at the same rate, not in opposite directions." Her role was not just about maintaining the household, but about being the steady presence that allowed him to navigate a career filled with volatility. Bon Jovi's world tours often lasted over a year, covering hundreds of shows, but Dorothea managed to create a sense of normalcy at home for their children while simultaneously supporting Jon's philanthropic endeavors. Her ability to manage both spheres gave Jon the foundation to continue performing at the highest level while maintaining his identity beyond the stage. For her part, Dorothea has offered her own perspective on why their marriage succeeded where many others failed. She highlighted the idea that longevity in marriage, particularly under the glare of fame, requires both partners to evolve together. Over more than 3 decades, they have weathered shifts in the music industry. The challenges of raising a family under public scrutiny and personal crises such as their daughter Stephanie's overdose in 2012. Rather than grow apart under the strain, Dorothea emphasizes that they adapted in unison, ensuring their bond remained strong. Jon's public confessions of imperfection stand as a rare admission for someone of his stature in the music world, where myths of invincibility often dominate. Fan and industry backlash. When Jon Bon Jovi secretly married Dorothea, fans who had invested emotionally in the fantasy of the young rock idol felt betrayed, and the anger was immediate and intense. The reaction from fans was visceral, particularly among young women who made up a large percentage of Bon Jovi's concert-goers. Many had posters of Jon on their bedroom walls, treated him as a romantic figure, and followed the band with near-religious devotion. When news broke that Jon was off the market, fan mail turned hostile and concert-goers expressed their displeasure. Some young women destroyed memorabilia, while others booed at shows in the immediate aftermath of the announcement. What had once been a carefully maintained illusion of availability had been shattered, and for an artist whose image was inseparable from his appeal, the consequences were seen as potentially catastrophic. The backlash was not confined to fans. Record executives and members of Bon Jovi's management were furious about the secrecy and timing of the wedding. In 1989, rock stars were marketed as unattainable fantasy figures, and marriage was viewed as a career risk. Executives worried that Jon's decision would undermine sales, particularly with female fans who were central to the band's commercial power. At the time, Bon Jovi was in the middle of the New Jersey Syndicate Tour, which spanned 16 months and included 232 shows across North America, Europe, Asia, and South America. With audiences of tens of thousands at each stop, the marriage became a global talking point, amplified by tabloids and music press alike. Publications such as Rolling Stone, People, and Billboard covered the story, often highlighting the clash between Jon's personal decision and the commercial realities of stardom. The controversy reflected the tension between authenticity and marketability, a dilemma that had haunted rock stars before, but rarely with such visibility. Yet, despite the immediate outrage, the long-term impact on Bon Jovi's career was not as devastating as executives feared. While some fans remained bitter, the band's momentum carried forward. The New Jersey tour continued to sell out arenas and stadiums, and the album went on to sell over 7 million copies in the United States alone, according to the RIAA. By the early 1990s, Bon Jovi successfully transitioned into a more mature phase of their career, proving that Jon's marriage had not derailed the band's trajectory. The episode, however, remains a telling moment in the history of celebrity culture, illustrating how, in 1989, the intersection of private life and public persona could provoke a level of outrage that spoke volumes about fan psychology and the commodification of stardom. But the thing about stardom is that we often forget that stars, too, are people. Daughter's overdose. In November 2012, Jon Bon Jovi's family life was thrust into crisis when his eldest daughter, Stephanie Rose Bon Jovi, suffered an overdose of a controlled substance in her college dorm room. Stephanie, then 19 years old and a student at Hamilton College in Clinton, New York, was found unresponsive on the morning of November 14th inside her dormitory at the upstate liberal arts school. Emergency responders administered Narcan, an opioid antagonist that can rapidly reverse the effects of an overdose, and she was revived before being transported to a local hospital. The news spread quickly across national outlets such as the New York Times, CNN, and Rolling Stone, shocking fans who were unaccustomed to seeing the carefully guarded private life of Bon Jovi intersect so publicly with the devastating opioid epidemic that had been gripping the United States. Stephanie's overdose also brought legal consequences. She was arrested shortly afterward, along with fellow student Ian Grant, 21, after police discovered controlled substances in her dorm room. Both faced charges of possession, which carried the potential for significant penalties. However, the case was quickly dismissed due to New York State's Good Samaritan overdose law, passed in 2011. For Jon Bon Jovi, who was on tour at the time, the event was a devastating personal blow. Speaking later in interviews with outlets like The Mirror and People, he called it the worst night of my life. The incident punctured the image of stability that he and his wife, Dorothea Hurley, had cultivated for decades, revealing that even a family often held up as a model of celebrity resilience was not immune to the struggles facing countless American households. Jon expressed gratitude that his daughter had survived and pointed to the challenges of parenting in an era where the use of controlled substances was rapidly escalating among young people. The timing of the incident highlighted a broader national context. By 2012, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had reported that deaths from overdoses had quadrupled since 1999, with nearly 41,000 overdose deaths recorded in the United States that year. Stephanie's near tragedy placed Bon Jovi's family at the center of this public health conversation, reminding fans that addiction and its risks transcended fame, wealth, and status. Vocal cord surgery. By 2022, Jon Bon Jovi had reached a pivotal point in his career when years of vocal strain finally demanded medical intervention. He had long been known for his raspy yet soaring vocals. However, fans and critics alike had begun noticing a steady decline in his voice during live shows, particularly around the band's This House Is Not For Sale tour. By the time the Bon Jovi 2022 tour was announced, some performances revealed how severely his range and power had been compromised. Concert reviews, including those in Variety and USA Today, pointed out that he struggled to hit high notes that once defined the band's sound. The issue was now threatening the very foundation of his career. The decision to address his vocal decline was not an easy one. Jon had always taken pride in his work ethic and ability to power through obstacles, a trait that had served him since Bon Jovi's breakout success with the 1986 album Slippery When Wet, which sold over 28 million copies worldwide. Yet by 2021, even he could no longer deny that his voice was faltering. In interviews, he described how he could sing around the weaker parts for years, lowering keys or restructuring songs. But eventually the damage became too pronounced. His wife played a crucial role in forcing him to confront reality. In a conversation he later shared with People, Dorothea delivered blunt but necessary feedback after one performance, telling him, "It wasn't great, and I've seen you be great." Now, Jon had to either undergo surgery or consider stepping away from the stage. Jon opted for surgery. But, you see, vocal cord surgery is notoriously delicate, with outcomes that can determine whether a singer regains full capacity, partial ability, or faces permanent vocal limitations. The procedure typically involves repairing or augmenting damaged vocal folds, sometimes with implants or by trimming scar tissue caused by years of overuse. In Jon's case, he underwent vocal cord medialization surgery, a process that required months of recovery and retraining. Recovery for professional singers often extends beyond 6 months, as the vocal cords must not only heal, but also be reconditioned through speech and singing therapy. For someone like Jon, whose career has been built on nightly performances for tens of thousands of fans, the stakes could not have been higher. The surgery came during a particularly high-profile moment in his life. The Bon Jovi band, formed in Sayreville, New Jersey in 1983, had by then sold over 130 million records worldwide and played more than 2,700 concerts in over 50 countries. They had also been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2018. For a figure so iconic, the prospect of losing his voice carried symbolic weight far beyond music. It risked ending a living connection to rock's global legacy. Jon himself admitted in interviews after the procedure that he had to grapple with the possibility that he might never return to the stage at full strength. He spoke candidly of the internal struggle. He was no longer the hungry 20-something chasing chart success, but a 60-year-old artist deciding whether his body could still sustain the demands of touring life. In the months following the surgery, Jon dedicated himself to recovery. This process was not just medical, but deeply personal. He had to rebuild confidence, stamina, and technique, often under the scrutiny of both fans and critics, eager to measure his return. The rehabilitation included vocal therapy, with specialists trained in working with professional singers, where exercises often involved controlled breathing, resonance training, and gradual rebuilding of range. Dorothea remained central throughout his recovery, offering what Jon described as tough love and encouragement in equal measure. Jon frequently acknowledged that without her forthrightness, he might have avoided surgery until it was too late. He noted that her perspective as someone who had seen him at his peak made her both his harshest critic and his most trusted supporter. This honesty, he admitted, was what ultimately gave him the courage to face surgery and the uncertainty that came with it. Many veteran singers, from Aerosmith's Steven Tyler to Journey's Steve Perry, have faced vocal challenges later in their careers, with varying outcomes. Jon's willingness to undergo surgery and openly discuss the process placed him among a select group of artists confronting the physical realities of aging head-on rather than quietly fading from the spotlight. By late 2022 and into 2023, Jon cautiously re-emerged in public performances, though not yet at the demanding pace of full tours. In interviews, he made it clear that he viewed his recovery as ongoing and acknowledged the uncertainty about whether he would ever fully return to his old vocal power. Yet the fact that he was willing to fight for his voice, even after nearly 40 years at the top of rock music, reflected the same determination that had propelled him from New Jersey clubs in the early 1980s to global stadiums. The partnership endured. So did Jon Bon Jovi. And together, they've done wonderful things too. Philanthropy together. In 2006, Jon and Dorothea launched the Jon Bon Jovi Soul Foundation, a nonprofit committed to addressing the root causes of poverty and homelessness in the United States. The foundation's mission went beyond charity to emphasize long-term solutions, focusing on affordable housing, job training, and community support services. Over the years, the Soul Foundation has funded projects in more than a dozen states, financing the construction of over 500 affordable housing units. These developments have provided stable homes for low-income families, veterans, and young adults aging out of foster care. These groups are disproportionately affected by housing insecurity. Notable partnerships included Help USA in Newark, New Jersey, which provides transitional and permanent housing for homeless families, and Project Home in Philadelphia, which has built entire supportive housing complexes integrated with healthcare, education, and workforce development programs. Jon repeatedly stressed that the foundation's purpose was not just to build walls and roofs, but to restore dignity, stability, and opportunity, pointing out that homelessness was not confined to big cities, but remained a nationwide crisis requiring consistent attention. By 2011, their philanthropy had evolved into a more personal and community-driven endeavor with the creation of the JBJ Soul Kitchen. The first location opened in Red Bank, New Jersey, designed as a community restaurant that operated on a pay-what-you-can model. Instead of fixed prices, guests could contribute a donation to cover their meal or volunteer time in exchange for food. The concept was directly inspired by Dorothea, who had observed food insecurity firsthand in their community and wanted to create a space where families struggling financially could share a meal with the same dignity as anyone else. Unlike traditional soup kitchens, the Soul Kitchen was set up to look and feel like a restaurant, with table service, fresh meals prepared with locally sourced ingredients, and a communal atmosphere. A second Soul Kitchen opened in Toms River, New Jersey, an area hit hard by Hurricane Sandy in 2012, where displaced residents and families in financial distress found stability through the program. Later, a third location was established on the Rutgers University Newark campus, where food insecurity among students had emerged as a growing problem, with surveys showing that up to 1/3 of students faced difficulty affording regular meals. By 2019, the Soul Kitchen network had served tens of thousands of meals, with nearly half of them provided to patrons who were unable to pay. Unlike many celebrity ventures, Jon and Dorothea were actively present, often volunteering in the kitchens, washing dishes, serving meals, and engaging directly with patrons. Together, the Soul Foundation and Soul Kitchen illustrate how Jon and Dorothea's marriage evolved into a partnership dedicated to social impact. These initiatives were not one-off acts of generosity, but carefully structured programs that tackled systemic issues of housing instability and hunger. The Soul Foundation had already invested over $20 million into housing, shelter, and hunger relief projects across the country, establishing itself as one of the most effective celebrity-driven philanthropic organizations in the U.S. Jon's fame provided visibility and resources, but Dorothea's influence shaped the direction and sustainability of their initiatives. Jon has often referred to her as the architect of the Soul Kitchen. What makes their efforts distinct is the combination of celebrity reach with grassroots-level engagement. Instead of charity as spectacle, they pursued philanthropy as infrastructure, designing programs that communities could rely on long after headlines faded. Their projects addressed systemic gaps, such as transitional housing for veterans, safe homes for homeless youth, and affordable dining options for struggling families and students. In interviews, Jon often emphasized that their work was about empowerment, not handouts, while Dorothea framed it as simply doing what was necessary when neighbors were in need. Through these joint efforts, Jon and Dorothea created a legacy that transcends music and fame, and it also reflects the strength of their bond. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.